Sahana vavatu, sahanau bhunaktu, sahaviryang karavavahai, tejasvina badhitamastu, ma vidvishawahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. We are on section between verse 18 and 40, and it is the three types of knowledge, three types of fortitude, three types of intellect, three types of doer, three types of happiness. And so we're just analyzing our experience. If we were to, for example, ask ourselves, what kind of happiness am I experiencing? Or what kind of happiness do I have on a daily basis? What kind of thinking do you have on a daily basis? What kind of commitment and willpower do you have on a daily basis? So you can even extend this list and you say, what kind of humor do I have? Is it tamasic humor? What is tamasic humor? Tamasic humor is insulting each other, stand-up comedy, making fun of other people. And then we have more intelligent humor. It doesn't really insult anyone, but it's still cerebral. It's still intelligent humor. So you can even apply it to things like sitting down. How are you sitting down? Is it tamasic sitting down, slouched? Is it sattvic, sharp and erect? So anything in life, driving, is it sattvic driving? Careful, considerate. Maybe you have a little sign in front of the steering wheel says, be compassionate to all people. Who does that? Or is it just a honk there in front, waiting to be put something onto? Even that is a space as a reminder for changing our attitude on the road. A little tip there. So how are we doing anything in life is what this section is about. And this doing can be divided into three sections. Sattvic, which is intelligence, which is always harmonious, which is always considerate. Is it rajasic, which is in most of the time, it's highly narrow, and it's that narrowness is towards my little window of raga, dvesha, likes and dislikes, like a little visor on the car. And that's what I have to see. And everything outside that is, I don't want to see that. Or is it tamasic, which is highly inconsiderate and highly uneducated and highly uncultured, as we will soon investigate what that is like. So before we begin, I want to make sure that we are all on the same page. This is not an academic study, even though you could still say, what is the Bhagavad Gita about? You can say, well, the Gita is about these 6 topics that we are investigating. That is one way to teach. But the way that I do it, this also depends on the teacher, is I say, instead of saying that what the Gita is about, it's happiness and fortitude and so on, I say, let's look at our own lives right now and let's analyze what kind of happiness and fortitude do we have in this moment. So this also depends on the teaching style. So let's revise actually. Last week we have done Rajasic knowledge, verse 21. And this was the knowledge which makes the world partialized. It makes the world be seen through a small scope of possibility. And so anything outside that possibility is unwelcomed and it is rejected. Sects of religion can be an example of this, whereby I will only look at one prophet, one person, and anyone who is not in that accord, who doesn't follow that, then I reject that. So it produces, of course, it depends on the person, but it can produce a narrow vision for the individual, unless they understand that it's just a means to help me to see one aspect of life. But then again, other prophets in other religions and so on also have different aspects to share. We used an example of 6 selfish men. So each man, it's originally the 6 blind men, but then you can always change the story. You don't have to stick rigidly. In fact, even how you use an example also, sattvic example use, rajasic example use, tamasic example use. What is a rajasic example use? Always sticking to the rigidity of the example, never going outside it. What is sattvic example use? Using your own creativity to extend upon the example. Therefore, the example is always included in the context, in the times that we are living right now. So we ask ourselves, why is Vedanta, Advaita, why are the Vedas still surviving and thriving? Because they are sattvic in nature. They're able to be expanded upon creatively with the times that we are going through, while still preserving the essence of the original message. So 6 selfish men decide to look at 6 different aspects of life, each one as convinced as the other that that specific aspect is all there is to living. And they're okay with that. They're comfortable. So Rajaguna is always about comfort. What makes me comfortable? I'll stay there. What doesn't make me comfortable? I will avoid that. So it's more about comfort rather than about the holistic picture, as was the case in verse 20, sattvic knowledge. This is Rajaguna. And we also brought an important point, which is having rajasic knowledge. If you ask the individual about the experience of death, then they will share some thoughts that would be inspiring. You will say, wow, you're not afraid of death. This is amazing. Tell me about it. And then they will, if you look more into that, they will say eventually that it's, they will continue thriving as an individual. And so we used an example last week, an inquiry to ask yourself, in fact, let's ask it right now. What is your relationship to this body dying, to being dropped away? What is that relationship? Think about that now. Is there any feeling? And where is that feeling? Is it in the chest, heart? Where is it? Dying, death. Self-inquiry. That is self-inquiry. Sometimes it's comfortable, sometimes it's not comfortable. Either way, it is work right now. Okay, so they will not be afraid. They will be rather excited, but then there's always some skepticism, like how can you be excited about death? Moved on to verse 22, tamasic knowledge. And this is whereby one part is the whole. There's no other parts. Everything in the world fits in this one single part. It's like wearing X-ray goggles. X-ray goggles that change the entire reality according to that color. In fact, what does the word vasana mean? Coloring. So in other words, the vasana of one perspective changes or colors the entire world. So again, let's ask right now, is there anything that you are looking at and you're refusing to change that perspective, stubbornly holding on to that perspective, because that's tamasic knowledge, refusing to change it? Is it in relationships? What about if I ask you, what is your definition of life? Like, what is your motto of life? And then we say, suppose an example, we say, well, my motto of life is I have to survive like a soldier. And I ask you 1 year later, what is your example of life? What is your motto? I have to survive like a soldier. In other words, 1 year went by, no change. So this means one is established in what kind of knowledge? Tamasic knowledge, because sattvic knowledge is always adapting to the times that we are going through. Therefore, for a sattvika person, the conditionalities of the world, the economy, the environment, the hardships of life, that is not an issue. You are molding and sculpting like a chameleon with the modern times. The moment we drop, we start to show resistance with what is happening. It could be in our immediate environment, at work, or anywhere else. So again, let's ask a question. When something different occurs in your life, something that is unfamiliar, how do you respond? What's the first thing that comes to your mind when something unfamiliar happens? Resistance? Solution mode? What's next? Who can I talk to? What resources can I get? Panic? And if there is, where is that feeling felt? Emotions first, head first. Do you know? Again, this is mastering your psychology. So this is how we are using this for our own work instead of just scholarizing about it. in a form of academic knowledge. We stated further, important fact is to save yourself some time. And if someone is rigid or unwilling to drop their opinion about the world, or something that is just irrational, illogical, completely illogical, like we used flat earth, or moon landing never happened, or 5G is the cause of COVID. These are just endless repetitive times that go on. And you try to reason with them, you're not going to succeed. You will be bitten by many teeth because the rationale is not working. So this means save yourself the time of arguing with highly irrational beings. You should have, maybe you could have a phrase or two. You say, tell me more. And maybe you can introduce some different perspectives without putting that hard black or white resistance, because the moment that's done, they will resist back. So, but you can introduce an opinion or two just to help them to see from a different perspective. But never argue, that's the rule. Otherwise, that's going to flood your own, it's going to disturb your mind. Let's move on to verse 23 to 25, which will talk about sattvic karma. Okay, sattvic karma, sattvic action, sattvic undertaking. Let's use the word undertaking a little bit just to mix up some words instead of just calling it action. Niyatam sangarahitam aragadveshatah kritam apala prepsuna karma yatat sattvikam uchyate.
Sattvic action is said to be that which is obligatory, which is devoid of attachment, and which is performed without likes and dislikes by one who is not desirous of result.
Threefold undertakings, and these undertakings can be categorized or can be said to be the threefold intention. What is your intention? What kind of intention do you have behind the action? Because behind every action, what is there? There's an intention. So what is the quality of that intention? What is the quality of that motive for that impels the action forward? What is the quality of thought because of which the action originates into the field of action? So let's look into all of that, okay? 3 kinds of undertakings. And let's point out some characteristics of sattvic undertakings. The first is to think about the consequences before doing anything. So just pause there. Just this one statement. What does it mean to think about the consequences before any kind of undertaking? Let's open some discussion.
It's looking at the laws of karma.
Expand on that.
I hope I can. Maybe others can help me expand.
Maybe kind of following a dharmic, being aligned with dharma.
Thanks, Nikesh. That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
Okay. What does it mean to think about the consequences before putting forward an action? Can you give us an example?
Yeah, just especially if you're going to do something wrong to somebody. So you're just thinking about how that might come back to bite you.
Actually, good example. So
yeah.
I have some loud crows here at the house. And I just happened to have a laser pointer that was used in class before. And I was like, how can I make use of this laser pointer? And I just decided to see how they're going to react. And, they have this like jerking motion. Like, what is this? They're chasing a little laser pointer. I just wanted to stop croaking. And right after, I tell you, I felt guilty for the next 2 hours because I hurt the bird with a laser pointer. So this is a consequence of not thinking about, well, what kind of effects is it going to ensue afterwards? So I had to find out, sometimes you have to do it to find out. So no more playing with the birds, okay? What does it mean to think about the consequences?
Just an anecdote that happened today with my son. He did an exam today and a couple of his peers, he noticed, cheated. They used their iPads, but he didn't. He had the opportunity to, and he told me this outright. I asked him why. I mean, why didn't you do what they did? You could have got a higher grade. And he said, because it wasn't right.
Mm.
And then I said, well, you have good ethics. And then he goes, what do you mean? And he didn't understand the word ethics at that point. I just said, you just knew that that wasn't the right thing to do. You could have got a higher grade, but you didn't do it. And I asked him again, why didn't you do it? Because he said, well, it wasn't right. And then if I did it, I wouldn't be able to live with myself.
Wow, what a powerful statement. It's a good example of Dharma shining through the individual, even though they cannot quite communicate it. Anyone else wants to say something?
For me, it's always difficult to put into words, but thinking about the consequences de-identifies me from the identification. If I don't think about the consequences, then I just act, and I'm identified.
Excellent.
If I look, I think, then I see myself doing things. I take some distance.
In other words, by thinking about the consequences, you are sustaining that buddhi viveka, that discernment. And
yes,
we automatically, mechanically act, that viveka in a momentary just disappears. And so we forget the individual, we forget who is this actor. Very good. Every action that we do is well thought out and planned. In fact, it's one and the same thing if you think about it. To think about the consequences is to think through what we are about to do, to plan through what we're about to do before just acting. It's like, what is the next step? What is my backup plan, by the way, if this doesn't work out? That is also thinking about the consequences, because sometimes we don't have something to fall back on, and then life may not give you what you want. And so what is it that I'm falling back on so that I can continue my life and have a smooth ride? Without the fallback, without the plan, it creates a spike in the mind, and then the mind has to now deal with that. And you know how long it takes to get out of that spike of the mind. So do you have a backup plan to sustain that peace of mind in case things don't work out according to the undertaking that you were about to do? Someone rejects it, says no, and you totally expected them to say yes. What now? Do you have a backup plan that's going to sustain your peace? That's very important to know. What does it mean to think about the consequences? For example, you're thinking about, someone mentioned, is if I compromise ethics, I will feel guilty for the next 5 hours, for the next 10 days even. Therefore, for that reason, I will not choose to put out an intention that will compromise ethics. If I say one thing, but do something else, then that person is not going to trust me anymore. Because people look at your actions and they certainly connect what you said, and now there's incongruency there. So even planning, even thinking about before I say, am I living it? And if I'm not living it and others see me, what kind of incongruence would that show? That would damage their minds. It's called losing faith in humanity. But also that will create major disappointment in myself. I was not able to fulfill that which I've been teaching and that which I've been believing for such a long time. Therefore, one way to overcome this is to only do as much as you can handle. Sometimes we take it to the extreme where you get caught, the samsara traps you. So only go little by little, the little manageable chunks, and then stay there. See how much you can handle. And then you can expose yourself to more so-called out there in the world. Okay, so it's very important to to know how much can I handle to remain that buddhi, so that buddhi, that discerner can say, no, this is too much already. Well, what I'm about to do, reinforce unity or agitation in our minds. Will what I'm about to say between us, suppose there's a conversation, reinforce the unity? Will it open up our hearts to each other? Or will it put a stop? That stop, you say something and then someone responds with a stop. It's like this doesn't give you a chance to continue with that thread of flow. Will this open their heart, open my heart, or will this close it? Will this put an end to the flow? that is also thinking about the consequences. Now, suppose this is an issue, suppose this is a condition, then it's no problem. There's always chance for recovery. You can say, I just noticed that I said something that was shutting this down. You can add now something. You can add something to continue the thread of flow. So it's never too late. Thinking about the consequences. It is also to consider the time, energy, and money that is involved that you're about to put through into some undertaking. Does this undertaking support the amount of time that I have, the kind of money that I have, and the kind of energy? Do I have the energy to go through the activity? Do I even have the money to go through this undertaking? Starting a business, how much money can I really invest? How much money do I want to comfortably invest? And if it were to be lost, suppose it's a share market or the mutual fund, then how much can I still be comfortable with without thinking, I lost my life? That much you think about. And time, is this going to cost me time? And how much time is it costing? And do you know when enough time, when is that boiling point? When is that tip, that limit? We say, okay, enough time, 5 hours, nothing happened for 5 hours, next step. Because if we don't set these limits, what happens? The world decides for us. Okay, then it's going to take 7 days. And you say, okay, no problem, I'm just going to wait. So you need to have a limit. How much am I willing to wait? For how long am I willing to wait before I make a decision for us in whatever situation? I'm trying to generalize for different circumstances. It is also involving taking up new courses or new books without really thinking if you can even finish the book. Oh, new book, good enough, I'll read it. While other books are yet to be finished. So this is also thinking about, is this course that I'm about to take, can I actually finish it? Or is it just like a novelty that comes into the field? Oh, great, let's try it out. It doesn't work, move on. Thinking about things before getting involved with things is sattvic undertaking. Okay, let's go into the verse. So the verse says, niyatam, following obligatory actions. Niyatam, we discussed. Obligatory. What is obligatory? What must be done no matter what? And in this case, they are actions for the sake of your spiritual growth, for the sake of expansiveness, for the sake of growth. What kind of growth? The one that's going to open your heart to the environment, the one that's going to reduce the noise of the mind. What kind of actions? The one that's going to make you more alive to realities. What are we talking about? We're saying more sensitive to what is going right now. Sangha arahitam. These are actions that are devoid of attachment. Why are actions devoid of attachment? Because even spiritual growth actions are what? They're a means to the end. They're never the end itself. The end is always moksha, but everything else other than that is a means. Therefore, for that reason, the person doesn't lose themselves in different things, taking them as the ultimate end. Even though you can still have hobbies, you can still have many things in life to keep it interesting, to keep it fun. I cannot imagine myself just studying 24/7 without any socializing or any kind of difference or any kind of variety in life. So all of this contributes to one's sanity. Music, creativity, art. What else do you do? Gardening, nature walk, painting.
Playing cricket.
So sports, all of these things are there to keep our sanity and keep our mindset healthi. In Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 4.3.15, there was a verse that said, Asanga hi ayam purushaha. Asanga hi ayam purushaha. And so why am I bringing this? Because this is similar to what it's saying here, but we'll see where to put this. It means that this purusha, this conscious being, it's asanga, it is not attached. So in this context, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad context, it means that you know yourself, and that self is not attached to anything. It is free. It's like Teflon. Atman is like Teflon, and for that reason, it is not attached to anything. So it always depends on what context you want to take. Araga dveshataha, actions whose likes and dislikes are not in the name of personal fancies, but likes and dislikes are in the name of what needs to be done. What's important to understand is raga dvesha is Ishvara Srishti. It cannot be eliminated. There's no question of saying I am totally desireless here. Desire is nature of life. But those desires, through the scriptures, get channeled into niyatam, into obligatory actions, into self-work, into spiritual work, into contribution, into yajna, into danam, into tapas, into, of course, you got swimming there too on the side, but into the study of this work. So likes and dislikes simply get channeled into what needs to be done. Why? Because likes and dislikes cannot be eliminated. Why? Because they are Ishvara Srishtihi. It also involves araga dveshataha, practicing a prescribed practice as originally told. For example, we have drunk yoga. Have you seen these things? Drunk yoga? So what happens is they will take the individuals who like to drink and they will make them drink alcohol, and then they will have them do asanas and stand, do various asanas with control. Now, what's happening here? What do? They took something original, Ashtanga Yoga asanas, and they customized it according to the likes and dislikes of the individuals. So they moved away from the original to what? To appeal to the likes and dislikes of individuals. And incidentally, this is very popular. It's a hot money maker for those who are hosting drunk yoga. Apala prepsuna. So this is similar to the previous. So undertakings, intentions are performed without a binding desire for a result. No binding desire for a result. So the question comes is, what does it mean to have a binding desire for a result? Or what would cause one to have a binding desire for a result?
Selfish outcome.
Selfish outcome. What will I get out of this? And it becomes about this single individual amidst this vast universe. And that individual wants to get something for themselves. So another important point that we can add on to this is future expectations. What is to come is always Jiva Srishti. What actually comes is always Ishvara Srishti. What should come right now is Jiva Srishti. How this experience should take place, how this class should be, what kind of people should be in this class, Jiva Srishti. What kind of people actually are in the class, Ishvara Srishti. How the conversation is to work out, suppose we're meeting each other, a little group meeting, and then there's this imagination, oh, you know, it's going to be so wild and so on. I don't think you can use the word wild in a Vedantic sense, but it's going to be wonderful. And then you do come, and then maybe the gloomy days and maybe some rain there. That is Ishvara Srishti, what actually is versus what I thought it's going to be like. How I am to feel right now in this environment, in this lovely place, in this your house, around these people, Jiva Srishti. How I actually feel right now, Ishvara Srishti. How the traffic is to be in the city, Jiva Srishti. How the traffic actually is, Ishvara Srishti. Can you give us some more examples on this?
Yeah, similar to the traffic, it's also, I always think of the traffic lights as being like the Ishvara Srishti or similar, because you just cannot control, even though that's man-made, human-made, they're still on a program, so they're never going to go always according to your likes.
Yeah, and we have some jivas sometimes who just cannot stand it, and they will take any opportunity, especially at night, to violate those laws. So it's the same thing here. The Jiva Srishti gets wallpapered over Ishvara Srishti. And the proportion to how much that happens, I think Meena wants to say something, is the proportion to how much one feels or experiences pain in one's life. Am I right, Meena?
Actually, I have a question about Raga Dvesha. I understood that Raga Dveshas are emerging out of my Vasanas. And the Vasanas is the creation of the Jiva, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought Raga Dvesha is part of Jiva Srishti, not Ishvara Srishti. Could you please help me understand if that's correct?
Okay, so Jiva's actions through the past efforts have built or developed the Jiva Srishti Raga Dvesha. So in one sense, let me backtrack. Raga Dvesha pertinent to every individual, like Meena's Raga Dvesha, is... Okay, let me actually backtrack even more. So Jiva Srishti specifically means when the person looks at the world through their Raga Dvesha. Are we clear on that so far? So I am perceiving the world through this Raga Dvesha. And your question is, that Raga Dvesha, so your question is about Raga Dvesha, right? So is
Right.
Raga Dvesha Jiva Srishti or Ishvara Srishti? So the answer to that is Raga Dvesha was built, created by the Jiva, and it is sustained by Ishvara's laws, because you need memory. The Jiva is not holding its memory. It is being held for the Jiva. Therefore, by the help of Ishvara Srishti, Jiva Srishti is present. And therefore, Jiva Srishti helplessly wants to express itself. So Jiva Srishti summary was developed or is a product of Jiva, but that Jiva Srishti, Raga Dvesha, is sustained by Ishvara Srishti. Therefore, we still need the help of Ishvara in order to perform our desires. Carry on.
So when we say that our actions should not be influenced by our Raga and Dvesha, what does it mean then?
It means that our actions are always influenced by Raga Dvesha. We're only changing our intention to what our actions is to act upon. And what is the intention to act upon? Those that are in line with obligatory niyata karma. Obligatory means what? Your own self-growth, contribution, yajna, dhanam, tapas. The Raga Dveshas are Ishvara Srishti. We said that earlier. They cannot be eliminated, but they are further modified by Jiva. So the Jiva now coming to Vedanta has to undo that modification. How? By aligning them back onto what the scriptures are saying, which is niyata karma, obligatory duties, meaning what? Upasana and nitya, daily duties, and upasana, personal things that make you grow.
Thank you.
One more point under apala prepsuna, that means actions are done without a binding desire for future results, is why should one just release the need for a particular Jiva Srishti oriented result to come by? The reason is because Ishvara is not in the business of making you happy. Ishvara is not in the business of making anyone happy in the universe. What is the business of Ishvara if Ishvara were to have a business? It is to simply uphold, to provide and sustain the laws and orders, the field in which the Jiva can express their likes and dislikes. That is it. So this is something to acknowledge right now. Is God in the business of making you happy? No. Okay, not at all. Because that would make what? That would make God a sadist. Oh, look, I'm going to make her happy. I'm going to make him unhappy. This means now God would have his own desires, the own raga dvesha. So now you say, well, so what? So God was also an actor and he acquired raga dveshas in some other universe. And now he's passing that into this universe. And on the basis of those raga dveshas, he's now deciding who is worthy of being liked and who is worthy of being disliked. So this means next time something unpleasant comes, there's no question of victim mode. Oh, why me? You know, this is so unfair. I've been doing good in my life. I've been attending classes. I've been doing, and everyone else is out there making fun, making noise in the world. And they're getting all of the the wonderful things apparently, and I'm getting nothing. Okay, this is all victim mode thinking. They may be getting that for now, but you don't know, you're not going to stick around for the next one lifetime or the next 2 lifetimes to see the kind of results that person will be going to. Ishvara is not in the business of making you and I happy. It is not a personal order. It is an impersonal order. To make it a personal order means suddenly Ishvara is your friend. Now we understand in the Bhakti world, there is this need to have, the Lord is my friend. That's different context. But Ishvara is not a friend who's, there to just kind of say, it's okay, my child. You can go through this process. I will get you out of samsara. It doesn't work like that, even though this is helpful at a certain context. So this is something to remember so that we don't next time get angry for not getting our results as we wanted them to turn out. So then if Ishvara is not in the business of making us happy, then what's the solution to this? Since we're going to continue delivering, continue receiving, that is, continue receiving the results that I are receiving. Are you receiving results every day? Can I ask? Are you receiving results? Yeah, every day. All of us, everyone on earth is receiving something during the day. Question is, how do we deal with that something that comes every day? What's the only thing you can really do in respect to that something that does come every day? Can't change it because it came. Can't curse it because it is Ishvara's order.
Accept it and be grateful for it.
Okay, good. So we're on the right track. Now, okay, what does acceptance mean?
To relax.
To relax about it. Okay, now let's be more specific. To relax. Okay, so we accept something and we relax. What does that mean to relax as a result of acceptance? Does it mean being submissive to accept?
No.
Does it mean to try to resist it?
No.
To try to control it? To acknowledge it?
Yeah, just be grateful for anything that is not good or bad that happens to us.
Good. So first step, acknowledge it has come. Now let's work with it with the resources that we do have right now. So the only thing that we can do in respect to what comes to us every day, including tomorrow, is change our attitude about what comes. That is it. That's all that Krishna is asking us to do. Change your attitude. Next question is, what kind of attitude do I change it towards? It is Ishvara Prasada. It is a verse 24. Let's move on to Rajasic karma. Yatu kame psuna karma sahankare nava punaha kriyate bahulaya sam tadrajasamudahritam.
Rajasic action is said to be that which is full of pain and which is undertaken by one who seeks result and who is arrogant.
Let's first ask this. What is a product of Rajasic action? What comes before an action? Thinking. What causes Rajasic thinking now? How do we start this in verse 20, 21, 22? Sattvic, Rajasic, Tamasic knowledge. So knowledge, what we have here, causes the thinking. Thinking causes the actions. In fact, I think this is the order Krishna is taking it. So he's taking Rajasic knowledge into Sattvic karma. So there's an order to this. How the knowledge that you have is a kind of actions that you put out. So this kind of undertaking pleases one group at the expense of another group's well-being. Bahula ayasam. While performing these actions, they tend to produce pain because there's a sense of urgency or attention for favorable results. And as a result of that, having to satisfy or appease the individual, there's a tension, there's urgency. This has to happen. And that urgency, what does that do? It reduces the amount of details that you put into one's work, because that urgency misses out the details. It just wants to get through the quantity versus the quality of work. It wears out the individual very quickly. And this is the cause of psychosomatic fatigue or psychosomatic diseases. We have an example of Steve Jobs with respect to this man. He claimed in his book, in the autobiography, actually was written after he passed away, that he worked overtime constantly. You know, he came back home, he only had 30 minutes or so on the sofa, and he didn't have time to see his kids and his wife. And then in the morning, 8 o'clock, back onto 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., working all day, just urgency, fatigue, tension, urgency, fatigue. It wears out the body very, very quickly. And so this is the rajasic action that does that. That sense of let's get as much done as possible in the shortest amount of time. Okay, so question. Is there any area where you feel urgency in your life? Like at work, do you feel this urgency? The sense of let's get as much done as I can? Do you have time to breathe at work? Are you conscious of your breath at work? If not, the moment you lose that sense of consciousness of the breath, that is already indicator of Rajaguna, excess Rajaguna. So tomorrow, exercise, write it on the palm, breathe. Just one little keyword, just to remind you to lower that sense of tension that we feel. In addition, we have kamepsuna sahankarena. So kamepsuna, you break down the sandhi, it is kama ipsuna sahankarena. So directly, kama, ipsuna striving for kama, who? He, by what? Ahankarena, by his or her individuality, by his or her ego. In fact, the word in Latin, what's the word I for Latin in Latin, which is 95% close to Sanskrit? Ego, spelled E-G-O. What's you in Latin? Tu. Same thing. So in Latin already there. Ego is I, literally means I in Latin. So by the sense of I, by the sense of the ahamkara, the sense of individuality, the person, ipsuna, strives for kama. So in other words, again, all of their undertakings, their intentions, motives are driven by what? The desire for a certain result, because that's how the ahankara works. There's always something for me to get here. And it's therefore driven by self-centeredness. For example, it's about my fame, it's about my honor, it's about preserving my pride, it's about showing others how educated I am, it's about showing you, putting this facade, putting this show or some kind of a personality. But it comes from either Greek or Latin, and it means actor. So ego means actor. In other words, what is the individual doing? Putting on an act and identifying with that act. So for this reason, because this act is there, they will display a show of arrogance. What does arrogance mean? A show of superiority. What does superiority mean? It means I'm so identified with this role that I'm unable to see you, because the person only sees their role out loud, very loud. Everything else is silenced in between, in respect.
You meaning the word persona?
Persona.
That's what you mean? Yeah.
Persona, good.
Okay.
I said actor. Persona is better. Okay. So the persona is obviously changing according to whatever is the demand, but there's the identity with that persona. And for that reason, arrogance or superiority is produced, which makes the individual disregard other people's feelings. And there's a sense of ownership. My status, my pride, my fame, my knowledge, and my entitlements. I am entitled to being treated like a king, entitled to being treated like a princess. For example, someone parks a car in front of your house, a public space, and suppose someone you park the car in front of someone else's house, and it's a public space, and they go to your house and say, "Can you please get your car away from my house? This is my house." And you say, "Well, this is a public road. It's not really yours." Real life scenario, right? Parks the car, knock, knock, get your car out of my house. It's not your house, it's a public space. Okay, so there's a sense of entitlement of the individual, and it creates a lot of inconveniences for other people. What is their relationship to career and work? they work overtime. And because they work overtime, a lot of details is skipped. And for that reason, it's very hard to sometimes trust them because they deliver a report with mistakes there because it was rushed. And multitasking also causes this mistakehood to come. So therefore, the person has to slow down, remember your breath, and say, am I paying attention to the details right now? Or is it about getting as much work as I can in this 1 hour? Of course, the person is not going to justify and say, well, I work good under pressure. But think about it this way. If you do work good under, suppose you say that you work good under pressure, what are you sacrificing? Because there's always a pro and con. I get it. The pro is you're getting a lot of work done. But what's the con? You're putting extra stress on the body. And that extra stress takes a long time to recover. Therefore, it shortens your lifespan. So think about that. Do you want to shorten your lifespan and get a lot of work done, or have a smooth, good, healthy lifestyle? And you may not be as fast, but you're doing it carefully. 25, tamasic action. Anubandham kshayam himsam, anaveksha cha paurusham, mohad arabhate karma, yattattamasam uchyate.
Tamasic action is said to be that which is undertaken due to delusion without considering the consequences, loss, harm, and capacity.
Characteristics of tamasic undertakings. So let's look at what do our actions look like when they are ruled by tamaguna. So any thoughtless type of action that is unplanned, that is rushed, it doesn't mind who it hurts, it doesn't consider who is hurt in the process, is tamasic in nature. And this usually comes from emotional complexions from childhood. For example, extreme rebelliousness. And what is rebelliousness? It just means harsh resistance or harsh challenge, a sense of defiance in the individual. So no, you don't tell me what to do. I'm going to do it as I want to do it. So this is this can be present in kids sometimes, but kids eventually grow out of this. So any kind of defiance, rebelliousness, there's that harsh resistance, like, no, you don't tell me what to do, that kind of thing. That is tamasic action by nature. And as we said, it doesn't consider the well-being of the environment. So we had a couple of years ago, the Niger Delta River in Nigeria, and they were exploiting the refineries. So they were taking the siphoning of the oil from Shell and Mobil that was going through the fields, producing petrol and diesel. And now you know how much toxin and how much waste oil produces. Well, what do they do with it? They just put it into the Niger Delta River. And through the years, this river became so bad, so black, that all plants on the shore just died out. It just completely evaporated. And you could just see the fires in different places spread out, because there were obviously many illegal refineries all burning this oil, because you need to evaporate the oil to get the petrol and the diesel. So no care for the environment at all, to get a few bucks. Now, there was an interviewer who obviously went into these fields and asked him, why do you do this? Obviously, the answer was, well, because we've got nothing to eat, so we have to do this. So this is an example of making money through tamasic means. We've got companies who are dumping tons of waste and chemicals in the holy Ganga and Yamuna River, in the back streets when no one's looking, and then you have so much foam and all this contamination. So this is all tamaguna thinking, saving a few bucks just to dump it into the river. Now, one company, that's not an issue, but it's not about one company today. It's about how many? It's hundreds and hundreds of companies. One person polluting is not a problem. What is the problem? It's the population. So many are doing it, and therefore more and more and more contributes to the environment. Abandoning a course halfway or a book halfway. Have you ever done this? Pick up a book, read it, so much gusto and enthusiasm at the beginning, and the course, yes, let's see what this course is about. And then within 10 sessions, quit. So again, I was not thinking, do I really need this? Is this really for me? That's why it says a good idea to first get to know the person that you're about to spend some time with through maybe some videos, and then go and attend their courses and their whatever they have to display. So quitting a book halfway, this is tamasic action, or a course or an audio or any of that. Another example is speaking without formulating in the mind the beginning, middle, and the end. So the person just spits out useless information. So we're not saying now think about everything before speaking, but generally there's that, like, this is inappropriate. So if I say to you right now, did you know that penguins have an arsenal of tricks to woo the other penguins? So if what happens is the male penguin goes across the seashore and finds the shiniest pebble and brings it back to the female penguin. That's when a female penguin, if she accepts, she will choose to go with this male penguin, and they will be monogamous for life. Did you know that? And you're like, it's kind of out of context here. It's not really useful. It may be fun to hear, but it's tamaguna still. It's brought something that is irrelevant to the conversation. So instead of saying something just to fill the conversation, to avoid those awkward silences, rather don't say anything and think what needs to be said on basis on what's going on right now. It's okay to be uncomfortable with nothing's being said. So we have to get used to that also. Street racing hoons. They find a suburb and they just go. A couple of them meet on a Facebook and they just go at it. Teen gangs think it's cool to attack an innocent person, a victim. On top of that, they post this on TikTok and normalize what violence means. Normalize violence. And then they get liked. It gets millions of views. People like it, subconsciously associating, this is acceptable. This is all tamaguna behavior. Ramana Charitamānasa, Lanka Kanda, Ravana was on the balcony, and Sugriva, obviously they went to Lanka. He was waiting to grab Ravana. So without thinking about Ravana's might, what did Sugriva do? He went right over and started to fight with him. And he was almost killed. And that's when he realized, no, I can't beat this guy. This guy is too strong. So he went back to Rama and he chided him for his thoughtlessness. In other words, even someone as powerful, the king of monkeys, Sugriva, even he didn't think whether he has the right might to beat someone. So this is, again, not thinking before acting. And this always has these negative consequences on the individual. Okay, let's go into the verse. Mohat anavekshya anubandham kshayam himsam paurusham cha. So action is done out of delusion. Why is the delusion there? Because the person is not educated and they have a lack of religion. So lack of education and lack of religion causes delusion. Therefore, the person does not consider consequences of what is about to happen. As we said, Sugriva example, they do not consider their own loss nor the loss of others, impulsive acting. They don't consider who it harms, and they do not assess what is about to happen once I put this action into the field. And they do not know whether they even have the capacity to do the job properly. Sometimes we just jump into something, but we haven't even assessed, do I even have the capacity to do this? So let's ask you, make it personal. So it's not just all talk. Have you ever jumped into something like a conversation or just got into something impulsively, making sports, some position that you were not quite confident with, but you wanted to sort of maybe demonstrate that you are confident, maybe wanted to prove to yourself or to prove to the community or prove to the community or anything like that. And you just jumped in there without really knowing whether you're an expert at that. That is tamasika action. Just going in there without knowing one's own capacity, whether it is possible. There's ways to overcome this, of course. For example, with public speaking in Australia, we have what's called Toastmasters. And then if you want to overcome that, you just go to a show and then you pick a few things out of the bucket and you talk about it for 2 minutes in front of other people. And then that fear slowly dissipates through the course of time. So if there is some of this that you don't know your speciality or your skill, then you can find ways to master it. You can find a group, a meetup group, and then just maybe attend one time and then see, what kind of skills, how are you in that area? Suppose you meet someone like this, right? They just do things that has no consideration for others' hurt, like a loud car, just, runs through and then everyone just notices it's interrupted, or loud phone in public. How do we deal with this without affecting your mind?
Especially in meditation, I find this happens.
Okay.
I sort of just ask myself, I use it as an example that the unchanging self is hearing this loud noise.
Okay.
It's entering into my, So I just think of it that way. Instead of thinking it's annoying, I just think I'm able to hear this due to consciousness of being. Just I'm able to hear this sound. Okay. And don't let it disturb me so much. Just acknowledge that it's there and just let it go, just like that.
Okay, I'll go with that thread now. Someone else wants to say one way to deal with unacceptable behavior. Rani?
Yeah, I don't think I deal with it. Is that I go to the bush a lot, the bush near my place, and there's about like 600, 700 kangaroos. And we get these bikies, they make a lot of noise. Oh. The really loud noise. So it's not about me. I can accept the noise, but I think of the kangaroos, they're all jumping and running. They get scared. So what I do is I come out, ring the council and tell them there's a lot of guys on a motorbike. Can you please come and attend to it? And they do come, the rangers come and sort it out. So they actually put a board on to say that no bike is allowed.
What about forgiveness? Value number 3, kshantihi, or accommodation. Okay, first of all, before talking about forgiveness, what is opposite of forgiveness? Condemnation. What is condemnation? Condemnation is excluding it from my reality with some sort of judgment, pushing it away through some sort of mental narrative. So in other words, one's excluding it from, it's a coping mechanism. But let's go with let's mix in forgiveness with firstly what Lorena stated. She said, she used the higher teaching. So first of all, how can you forgive something? What does it mean to forgive? Let's talk about that. What does it mean to be accommodative towards the environment? Is it really affecting you? Is it really affecting you? Okay. We said last session, you are space-like field of awareness, your space-like existence. Nothing really affects you. No one's ever done any harm unto you if you think about it. No one's ever hurt you. No one's ever done any good to you in the same way. Through this alone, we can forgive a little bit. We can say, hey, no one's ever hurt me. They hurt this body, but not myself. Now let's go into Saguna teaching. That was the Nirguna teaching. What is Saguna version of forgiveness? Well, we can learn from Krishna. Firstly, how many times did Krishna speak to Duryodhana? He did not write him off. He tried over and over again with all of his might and compassion to try to help out Duryodhana to his spoiled ways. So firstly, let's not write off the person immediately. Let's try to, number 2, look past their appearance, past their body, what their body's doing. Because what do we do usually? We look at what the body's doing, right? And we stop there and we judge it based on the body. But a body is a product of what? It's a product of the mind. It's a product of the program. It's a product of all of their life that is causing them to choose that action right now. So number 2, you're choosing to look behind the appearance. Look at the story. What could have caused this person to choose this kind of behavior? Get curious a little bit. This is the method of forgiveness. Number 3, we stated, how do you forgive? How do you go about accommodating? Who chooses to be ignorant when they're born? No one. And yet, by the power of Tamaguna, everyone is born ignorant. We have to learn the basics of the basics. I said this before, I know. But the truth is, everyone is born ignorant about basic culture, about ethics, about even though ethics is intrinsic in all human beings, but still covered by past life raga dvesha, right? So despite that, everyone's parents don't know everything. The school children, the other school children don't know everything. Their parents don't know anything. So in other words, we're born in a field where ignorance is basically the norm. And as soon as that ignorance gets removed, only then the individual goes, oh, geez, I didn't realize this. This was bad. This was not good at all. But that is not the case. That is a utopian dream, isn't it? Where it's all there, knowledge is there, everyone gets educated, everyone knows what dharma is, everyone has culture, everyone has religion, everyone's saying hello to each other. This is a utopian dream. And lastly, what is forgiveness? It is an active process of the mind. What is the mind doing during forgiveness? It is looking at the specific facts, the specific objective. What is specific here that is disliked? If we don't get specific, what happens? We generalize over the whole person. We generalize them, we generalize, their background, everything about them, we generalize into one category. So get specific. What specifically do you not like about this situation, this person, what they're saying? Is it how they're saying it? What words do you not like? What specific section do you not agree with? Therefore, you're getting objective, factual. What is factual? What is actually going on? Versus adding another layer of judgment. They should not be doing this. This is unfair. All of our opinions get planted on, and this stops us from looking at that individual as they are.
I'm sometimes judgmental. I think I'm a bit of a judgmental person. So if I see someone behaving badly, two things I find help me is to think, was there a time in my life that I ever did that or acted like that?
Right.
And often I'll find that there was when I was much younger.
Right.
And the second thing I think is happy people don't behave like that. We all want happiness, so that person's suffering. And that makes me more understanding of why they might act like that. They've lost their way.
Indeed. And this is a way to also have some empathy for the individual. We too, when we were young, when we didn't know, innocently, we didn't know, we made and we did the same things to other people. And we thought it was fun. Let's just pull someone's leg. And we thought it was fun, but it was not fun to them. So yes, it is a field of action, the Kurukshetra field, where people have to learn, where people have to discover what is appropriate or not. And saying that, revision, verse 23 was sattvic karma, and this is to think about the consequences before doing anything. Verse 24 was raja guna karma. This was pleasing one group at the expense of the well-being of another group. So this is not thinking about the whole, it's thinking about one possibility. And tama karma, tama guna, was thoughtless action. So it doesn't consider who is hurt and who's going through pain. It doesn't even consider its own sense of well-being. So it's very careless. What Krishna is teaching us here is to align ourselves, if we can, higher to sattvic guna. Just try to go up. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.